Now, probably the most consequential wrecking job has been within the federal agencies, and in particular within the agencies that were set up by Congress a long time ago to perform tasks that annoy or inconvenience business, like the Environmental Protection Agency or the Department of Labor. And since you never hear about the Department of Labor outside of Washington, in fact, since you never hear about the Department of Labor inside of Washington, that's what I'm going to talk about, the Department of Labor. The poor old Department of Labor, which the Bush people have stuffed with cranks and zanies of the deepest hue, giving special priority to anti-labor activists, right? That's who belongs in the Department of Labor, anti-labor activists. The guy who oversees the Employment Standards Administration, for example, turns out he was the author of a 1995 report called How to Close Down the Department of Labor. The guy in charge of OSHA came to the job from a union-busting law firm. For Secretary of Labor, the president first proposed Linda Chavez, who is famous for her smoldering hatred of the labor movement. When she didn't work out, Bush replaced her with Elaine Chao, a woman who believes it is a crushing indictment of her own department's regulations to point out that they contain more words than the Bible. The department's chief economist, very interesting fellow, he didn't last long, but the Bush administration's chief economist of the Labor Department was not only a ferocious enemy of unions, but an advocate of allowing entrepreneurial prison wardens to bring back convict labor. Now, he left early on in the Bush years to start a new career as a 9/11 conspiracy theorist. The department's chief information officer was formerly a right-hand man to Jack Abramoff. There's even a senior advisor to the secretary who appears regularly on Fox News to talk about intelligent design. Now this, my friends, is an example of what we call fucked up design. I'm sorry. You're going to have to believe it. It's fouled up design. It's an example of what we call foul up. Now the last point that I want to make tonight is about the word conservative itself, about the idea of conserving the society that all of us were born into. Now, back in 1965, when I came into the world, America was enjoying one of the greatest periods of prosperity in its history. In that year, American GNP grew by 6.5%. By the way, in these glory days of the billionaire, it rarely gets over 2%, or just barely above it. When it gets over 2%, it's a banner year. That's big bonuses all around when that happens. But in 1965, it grew by 6.5%, and this was in line with the official stated goal of American economic policy, a growing abundance widely shared. Can you believe our government ever put those words down on paper? A growing abundance widely shared. We were supposed to be the affluent society. Remember that? The great land of equality. Taxes were high. Regulation, I suppose, was onerous. And the richest man in the world was oil baron J. Paul Getty, worth between $1 and $2 billion, and fond of complaining about how tough it was to be rich. Since these days, meaning 1965, even the middle-class man had access to what once had been the exclusive privileges of great wealth. By the way, he would write about this again and again and again. It really bugged him. Look at us now, right? After almost 30 years of so-called conservative rule, through the smoke and the wreckage of the old liberal state, we can dimly perceive the approach of a new and sort of vaguely familiar America. This colossus that we see coming is not the product of some awesome and irresistible force like globalization, but rather of decades of hard right-wing work, of careful bureaucratic sabotage, and an occasional shot of lobbyist money. The outlines of the accomplishment are unmistakable. Our productivity gallops along, but since workers' organizations are out of the picture these days, only the people at the very top benefit from the advance. Last year, there was a hedge fund manager who made more than $3 billion in 1 year. I mean, more than J. Paul Getty's entire fortune. It took him a lifetime to pile up. And I suppose that is a great accomplishment for us as a society, right? That we've got one more billionaire to be proud of. Hot damn. But think about the cost Think about what it costs to raise us up another billionaire. Sudden outbreaks of deadly food poisoning, train derailments, deadly mine accidents, tap water that's unfit to drink, mysterious workplace diseases that it turns out upon investigation could have been easily avoided at just a slight expense to management. But all of it made possible, made unavoidable even, by a philosophy of government that regards business as its only important constituent. Look, it is obvious to me now that throwing the rascals out is no longer enough. The problem today is structural. It is inscribed on the map of Washington. I mean, it glows from the illuminated logos on the contractors' office buildings. It is built into the systems of governance themselves. One of my friends summarized this really concisely one afternoon as we were having lunch in one of those restaurants. It's a place called Crystal City. I don't know if you've been there, but this is where the Army officers and the contractors in their suits, everyone wears a suit in Washington, this is where they get together and have lunch and discuss whatever it is that they discuss, the contracts that they're going to sign or something like that. And my friend, sort of sweeping his hand to take in all our fellow diners, and then out the window you can see the office buildings of the contractors. Here's KBR, Kellogg Brown and Root, who are running the war in Iraq. Here's Lockheed Martin. Here's Boeing. Here's SAIC. And he says to me, so you think all of this is just going to go away if Obama gets in? This whole industry, this whole economy, all these profits, just go away. And he's right. He was right to be skeptical, of course, and on an even grander scale than I think he meant. Back in Jay Gould's day, back in the classic period of business government, an epidemic of public theft persisted despite a long string of reformers in the White House. Republican after Democrat after Republican, each of them promising to clean the place up, and nothing worked, nothing ever worked, and for this simple reason. Democracy cannot work when wealth is distributed as lopsidedly as theirs was and as ours is again today. The inevitable consequence of plutocracy then and now is bought government. As Justice Brandeis said about 100 years ago, we can have democracy in this country, or we can have great wealth concentrated in the hands of a few, but we can't have both. It's a bitter lesson that we have to relearn all over again. Because whenever there was a choice to be made between free markets and free people, between money and the health of society, our conservative friends consistently chose money. I say it's time to make them answer for it. On day one of the Obama administration, he should appoint a blue ribbon commission, and I mean deep, deep blue. Blue ribbon commission to investigate the entire history of outsourcing and privatizing in the United States, going back to the Reagan administration. And because we have no idea what's going on with these outsourced and privatized operations. There is virtually no accountability. We don't know, what's been spent. Has the money been well spent? Has it been harmful to the federal workforce to have, when you outsource somebody's job to somebody at a private company that's paying him 2 times as much, but he's working for a private company, not for you and me? Has that been good or bad for the federal workforce? You know what the answer is going to be on that one, of course. But right down the line, investigate this phenomenon and come back to us and tell us in incredible detail, has this been a good idea to privatize government? And I volunteer to serve on such a commission.